What is good, Tsla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for on Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I'm going to break down what's going on with all these different technicals and what the news is saying about Tesla and what the data is suggesting. But before I do anything like this and talk about the technicals and give you guys my price predictions for tomorrow, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just about 2 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so a lot of people are kind of confused about my videos where I talk about how Tesla could get these bounces, these breakouts, and people are wondering, like, wait a minute, Tesla looks bearish on the bigger time frames. Why are you talking about some kind of bounce? And the answer is this channel is built more about like the short-term fluctuations in the stock market. It doesn't matter that, yes, like, the overall trend could look more bearish. Sometimes that's the case. If you look at Tesla, it technically has been making lower highs and lower lows on the much larger time frames, right? If you look at the daily, the weekly, not as strong. But for the shorter term, right, for the next few days, for the next week or so, there are still going to be those nuances in the price action, which could help people make a lot of money when you understand trading and things like that. So for the short term, as I was talking about, it's very probable Tesla could get a bounce like this to retest the upper resistance of the bullish falling wedge, or even break out of it and start pushing up even higher to 250 or so. That is a real possibility. But just because I'm saying this, I'm not saying Tesla's going to go to like 300, 400. It's bullish in that sense. I mean, this is bullish technically, going from 230 all the way up to 250, and a lot of money could be made on options. And if it goes even higher, let's just say it goes to like 257, for example. Even if it goes up there, that is still a lower high compared to some of the highs from here, right? So it could still, reject later on. That could still happen depending on many different catalysts, such as the FOMC minutes, and the list goes on. But I just want to be as clear as possible that I'm talking about the short term fluctuation. I want to focus more on this because for the short term, there are going to be smaller pieces of price action that could dictate this stock. And they will be, once again, very lucrative if you learn how to make money on them. So I want to make that as clear as possible. But, anyways, what's going to happen for like the more shorter term for Tesla, in my opinion? I believe there's going to likely be more upside coming. I don't think Tesla's done with this bounce. I'm going to break down exactly why that is. But first, let's talk about some data and things like that very quickly. So, for tomorrow, we have some more data coming out. We have retail sales month over month. We have the import prices, the export prices all coming out 1 hour before the market opens. We also have exports and imports for year over year and month over month, some housing data, and all these things coming out in the morning. My gut tells me that this may cause the market to gap down or slow down a little bit as we got a very monstrous pump near the end of the day. But even if the market does gap down to start us off in the mornings, okay, there's been a trend where the market's kind of slow for the mornings for the last couple of trading days. And then intraday, we start to see the pumping happen. The market starts to bounce. And I think that's what's going to likely happen now. And I think it's very probable that this could affect Tesla. Now, why could the market pump later on? Well, one thing worth mentioning is that at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, or depending on where you are in the world, if you're like in wherever you are, but basically for Eastern time, this is going to be about 1.5 hours after the market opens. We have Kashkari from the Fed giving a speech. And Kashkari has a tendency of being one of the biggest doves out there. He tends to pump the markets, talk about like rate cuts and things like that. I mean, you could agree or disagree, it's your choice, but you have to be objective when looking at this because this could still pump the markets whether you like it or not. Today, the market pumped, whether you want to be a big bear or not, the market is still not going to care and do what it wants to do. So you have to be ready for these fluctuations and things like this. Now, to add on to this, for earnings, just as a big reminder, we have Suncor Energy after the market closes. We have the Home Depot and just a couple of others, and you as well after the market closes. And then for Wednesday, we have Target and TJ Maxx. For Thursday, we have Walmart and Dole and Ross, and just a couple of others after that. So earnings are going to be very interesting for retail. Now, why did Tesla slow down compared to the market? Because Tesla should have had a green day technically. One of the things I mentioned on this channel was that Tesla could have bounced off 240 and tried pumping, Or if we got a bad piece of news, you're going to be watching that gap fill at like 235, then bounce. We ended up getting this gap fill down to this 235 area. Then we got the bounce because of some bad news involving Tesla. And that has to do with prices being slashed in China once again due to the weakening demand in the country. So the Model Y and Model 3 models ended up getting price cuts in China again. And this is unfortunate news. Technically, this is going to reduce their margins. And once again, many investors were not happy about this. Now, these slashes that have been coming to the prices are as a result of big nuances happening in China and its economy. We're starting to see contraction from it when the credit standpoint, slowdowns in imports, and signs of weakening demand for individuals out there. So the slashes were about at about like $1,900 USD. Still is quite a bit. It's not like that insane, but it's worth mentioning. And then we also saw them, some of them out there were still actually qualifying for particular subsidies, but it's just worth mentioning that these price cuts happen and the headlines are just going to continue to come out with them. So this is some big news for Tesla. Looking at some more data at Tesla, Morgan Stanley is saying that Tesla is going to perform equally with the markets. The price price ratio has dropped quite a bit, but we're in a point where it might actually try to hold up around here, meaning Tesla may start to perform equally with the markets. And if they keep pumping, this could help Tesla. Finally, if you look at the data, Tuesdays tend to be relatively decent days. About 51% of the time we're green, a little bit more than half the time. We tend to do better during the third, during the fourth and fifth hours of the trading day, especially during the fifth hour. Those are going to be very important to watch for. And then finally, looking at some more data, the short interest has been going up just a little bit. So even though there's a little bit more shorting, if more of these shorts start closing their positions as Tesla starts pushing, this could also help with more pumping to the upside, even on low volume. Now, what's good about Tesla is the volume was only about 98 million, a little bit lower than average. We dropped on not so high volume and we started pumping for the majority of the day, which is still another good sign for Tesla. So, what do I think is going to happen from a technical standpoint? Okay. For the shorter term, here's what I think is going to happen. Now, if you're bearish, you could argue that Tesla could drop to like 230 and then try to bounce its way back up to like 240. But I don't think it's going to play out that way. That's like the more bearish case. I think that this yellow line is more likely what's going to play out. Just ignore this top right here. I kind of just drew that out just for like reference. But I think something like this is more likely to play out. You could ignore like this second half of it. We're just going to focus on this move right about here, the pump that's going to be happening for now. What I think is that Tesla could be forming a very nice looking inverse head and shoulders as it hits support around this 235 level. We saw a small little drop below before it came right back up pretty fast. And this was a nice accumulation phase right here as the buyers stepped in. As they stepped in, we had a nice inverse head and shoulders, and Tesla has been on its way up to fill this gap. And I think Tesla's going to push up for 242 quite easily. That's my target for tomorrow, but it could go a little bit higher to like 243 or so. If it manages to hold above like 242, flat, I think there's a good chance it could continue going and try to go all the way up to about this 245 area. Now, to start off, because of the fact that the market pumped and we have all this data coming out, we might see Tesla kind of gap down again and slow down a little bit in the morning, maybe retest like 236 to 237, drop a little bit in the morning, and then get a nice bounce after that. Try to push up very, very nicely, make its way up to about 242 plus, if not even higher levels like 245. I think Tesla looks more bullish from a technical standpoint, not just because of this inverse hand shoulder, but also because we have a triple bullish divergence on the 30 minutes time frame. Once again, these are smaller time frames I'm using. I still think Tesla could see some upside, and I'm leaning more in that direction. I think Tesla could be making its way up, and that's what I'm predicting for the time being. Now, I went over the more like bullish and bearish cases. I think what's going to happen is the gap down, slow down in the morning, retest of 236 or so, then a nice bounce, push up to 242, if not 245 if we break that. And I think Tesla's going to get a green day for tomorrow. That is my prediction. Another thing that's going to help this will be the overall market. If you look at SPY, it had a tendency of dropping in the morning, then pumping, dropping in the morning, then pumping. This happened on Friday and Monday. But we have this inverse head and shoulders that formed, right? We have a left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder, and we're starting to pump in a nice accumulation phase. Now, this is good because when you look at SPY and the much bigger picture, we have this falling wedge that still has been developing. And I think it's still looking pretty decent for it because we could quite easily see something like this where we see this thing kind of like gap down like this, come a little bit lower to retest this area right here on 447, then get a nice bounce. And then if you look at it, right, we have this nice left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder, and then this would take this thing all the way up to at least 250 plus, if not 252. So what does that tell me? I think tomorrow we're going to see SPY gap down, retest the 447s or so, maybe 446.7, maybe a little bit lower. It's going to gap down as we do have an ascending wedge right here as well. Technically, a very tiny little baby sized one. This may cause it to gap down, come down a little bit in the morning, then get another bounce and start pushing for 450 either by Tuesday or Wednesday. I see like 450 coming, and it could go all the way up to 452. I think the market's going to try to pump a little bit more, gap down first in the morning, then pump after that. And that's what I'm thinking about SPY. I think that's very, very probable. I see the same thing for the IWM. May come down to about 189, 190, then bounce and start pushing up for 192. I find that more probable. Looking at Apple, we have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure, nice accumulation that's forming like a cup and handle, and we have a very clean setup. It looks pretty obvious that this thing is going to eventually make its way up to about 180.75 or so, at least above 180, which is where our 200 EMA happens to be. There's going to be more upside for Apple. It's going to help SPY in the QQQ, and then the algorithms are going to take over and help Tesla, Nvidia, and all these different stocks start pumping because of it. Not just because of like Apple. I mean like in general as they move together. So I think Apple might gap down. Okay, retest 179 or so. 179 flat, if not 178.7, a little bit lower, just come down in the morning, then get a nice bounce and start pushing for about 180 a share. And I think Apple is more likely to be bullish, closing green once again. I'm leaning more in that direction. Once again, a slow down in the morning, then a nice pump, and a close in the green. I think the QQQ is going to do the same thing with this ascending wedge forming. It might come down to like 368, then bounce off that and start pushing for about either 372 or 374 after that. So watch for a slowdown, then a bounce and a push to the upside. For Nvidia, I believe this thing may end up coming down to about this 432 area, if not 430. Come down a little bit, cool off a bit on the RSI, gap down, and then get a nice monstrous pump again back into the 445 to 456 zone. So we had a lot of sharp and consolidation in this zone, which is going to act as a magnet up here. I think the video is going to come back to this zone up here and push all the way up into like the 450s. My prediction would be a bit of a drop to about 430 and a bounce and a push up for about 430. On the 4-hour time frame, you can see it right about here. Nvidia got a really nice bounce off this level. This is the level we were predicting around 400. We called this bounce on Nvidia. You guys remember I was talking about the bounce over the weekend, a bounce for Tesla, and this is what we're getting. We're also getting very close to our 20 EMA. We have this unfilled gap all the way up here around like 464. I'm not really counting on that to get filled for now, but I am looking at this gap right here around this like 445 area. Look for a gap down, then a push up. That's what I'm leaning towards, and I could see 450 plus very, very soon. For Netflix, same thing, it could gap down. I remember looking at like 416 or so, a bounce and then a push up to about 430 plus is what I'm leaning towards. If it breaks that 432, we're going to be watching 440. Gap down and pump is what I'm looking for on Netflix. AMD, same thing. It could come down to 107, retest 109 to 107 around there. I would say 109 maybe, then a bounce after that, then fill this gap later on to 116. I think that's very probable. Looking at the dollar, this thing once again pumped quite a bit, at least on the daily. But if you look at it, we could see this bearish divergence play out on it, and this could lead to some downside for it. It's not showing on the 30-minute, but on the 4-hour time from its presence. The bearish divergence could lead this thing to retest 103. If that's the case, that could lead this thing to slow down a bit as the market pumps. The 10-year Treasury yield has a gap down below, so that could end up getting filled, leading the market to pumping more. So we have this gap down here. We haven't really fully filled it. If it rejects off this bearish divergence, starts coming down, that would be bullish for the market. SPX, I think it's going to go to 4,500 on the, I think it's the daily or the 30 minutes time frame where the 200 EMA happens to be. It's around 4,500. That's my target for SPX. A gap down tomorrow, then a nice pump. It looks very, very probable. For the Nasdaq, same thing. Gap down to a nice pump. It could go all the way up to about 14,000, leaning more bullish on it for the time being, but it always could reject off here and come back down lower later on. It's just that for now we're seeing some upside and everything can change later on depending on how we react. For the VIX, we called this out yesterday. The left shoulder, the head, the right shoulder. If it keeps dropping, we're going to fill this gap down here, which is going to be bullish for the markets. The market being bullish could cause the VIX to come down to the 13s, filling the gap down there. Why? Because the market has more room for upside. Coinbase may gap down to like 78 to 79 around there, then start pushing up for about 82 plus, then potentially 84. I think it may slow down in the morning, then pump up to 84. Google, same thing, may come down to like 131 flat, then bounce off that and push for about 132. We have a nice accumulation structure. 132 is going to be my target. 132.6 looks very probable. For Amazon, it's the same thing. Could come down to 132 139, maybe 140 flat around there, then we could just continue this accumulation and eventually make our way up to about 142 to 143. So watch for a bit of a slowdown to like 140 flats, maybe 139, and then a bounce and a push up for about 142 to 143. For Meta, it looks more bullish in my opinion. It could come down to about 305 to 306 again. Just drop a little bit, then get a nice bounce and start pushing for 312, which is where we have these imbalances. The trend looks more bullish. We're going to be watching for this nice bounce off the 200 EMA to play out, and this imbalance around 312. I could see 312 and 316 on Meta. It looks more bullish after a bit of a drop in the morning and a push after that. So that's what I'm seeing for the morning, guys. Let's watch for a nice move on Tesla. I want to see this thing push up very nicely, and that's what I am predicting. Please watch your levels very carefully. I'm leaning more bullish on Tesla. I want to see this thing pump, and please remain calm, cool, and collected. It may gap down tomorrow, may start off a little weak in the morning. Then I'm going to be looking for an intraday bounce and a nice push up as time goes on. I want to see it fill the gap at 242, break that, then 245 is on the table. With that said, have a great day. Tesla in the market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.